So what's up, everybody? In any event, good morning to you. I'm kind of out and about today, and it's been raining up here for quite a bit. I put out a video yesterday, about my thoughts on the Venezuelan thing, and I didn't like the tone of my voice. I'm getting better at orating, and to be honest, the video was okay. I should have put some stuff in my hair. I had gotten back from judo and took a shower. Didn't put gel in my hair. Just all the little things that you got to be aware of when you're doing a video. But the thoughts are more important, And then at the end of it, I put the Ghetto Boys. And I've got these two Christian videos coming up. And, I'm not always the best Christian because I like abrasive, offensive music sometimes, Today I want to get into a little bit of the Pam Bondi thing about the memo that they had, that Pam Bondi released, the Department of Justice, that was in response to the Charlie Kirk shooting. Like I said, I used 308 most of the time when I was 308, the round, the caliber, for those that don't know. Very powerful round, which is similar to the round that they say killed Charlie Kirk, which actually the round that they say killed Charlie Kirk, I believe was 30-06. Just falling off the top of my head. Which is an even more powerful round than 308 is, and the response to that is still more government control. What the politicians are going to do to guarantee their safety, so they're going out with, we're going to accuse Americans of being domestic terrorists if they have an opinion that's against whatever the current administration thinks, because the Trump administration is not the first administration, nor will it be the last. So depending on who's in office, if you are an American and you hold an opinion, if you dare to have your own opinion, you are potentially a domestic terrorist. The Charlie Kirk thing, there's been a lot of to-do about whether or not that was a setup. Charlie Kirk being pretty critical of Israel. I'm critical of Israel, man. I'm not an Israeli citizen, and I'm not Jewish. And, the whole anti-Semitism thing, I'm not pro-Muslim either. I've read the Quran a couple times. And if you go through the Torah, I'm a Christian. If you go through the entire Torah, you don't see Jesus' name in the Old Testament even once, right? But let's not get off on that tangent. It's possible Israel had something to do with Charlie Kirk's death. There's a lot of, they love to call everything a conspiracy. Charlie Kirk wasn't hit with a 308 or a 30-06 round. Everybody that's ever been in any type of combat regarding that round, or even other rounds, other calibers, already know that it's completely not feasible. The lack of damage done to his body, not typical at all of what you would see with that. So many people have come out and flat out said it. I don't need to say it again. And also with 9/11, you see some stuff happen, like 2 buildings or 3 buildings, 2 planes, and all these other points that people can't really explain away. They call it a conspiracy theory. The government, whether these are conspiracy theories or not, whether 9/11 was an act of terrorism, whether Charlie Kirk was killed by a single shooter and not concerted movement between government actors, even if those are true. The government's overreach in both cases, with the continual reapproval of the NDAA, even when the government has been found to be acting outside of those bounds with warrantless wiretapping and FISA court, and other oversteps of their authority or abuses. And even if Charlie Kirk was killed by one guy, they always capitalize on making it all about the government and never about the people. And you know, continuing on from yesterday's video about the Constitution, you know, the Constitution does not limit the American people. The Constitution limits the government. There is not a single way that the Constitution limits you, the citizen. Not one. The Constitution is only there to limit the government and what the government may or may not do. And again, here we are. You know, I had no sooner finished yesterday's video than Pam Bondi's memo came to light. And I'd wish I'd known about it. Well, actually, I'm glad I didn't know about it because I wanted to stick to the point of the Venezuelan boats. Pam Bondi and Donald Trump or any other politician, do you remember when the FBI was saying that parents are potentially terrorists, domestic terrorists, for wanting to know what's being taught to their children in school? You remember that? You know, there are a lot of law enforcement and military and vets out there that are going to watch this. And a lot of times, people that have never carried a weapon for a living professionally will think that it's only the people that don't carry a weapon for a living professionally versus all the people that do. That's not true. The people that carry weapons professionally are also made up of everyday people such as yourself. In fact, they are only everyday people that decide to go into the military or law enforcement, whatever. What have you. They're everyday people too. In fact, the military primarily targets impoverished people that don't have another opportunity. And if you go to Clinton, Oklahoma, or any other place, you're going to find a federal recruitment center there to where they're trying to pick up people that don't have any other opportunity to join the military. So when we talk about the government and the government's watchdogs, you need to understand that everybody that works for the federal government in the military and everybody that becomes law enforcement is an everyday normal Joe that's just been given the authority to carry a weapon in the employ of the United States federal government, county government, state governments, city governments, and what have you. So this is an important conversation to have amongst all of us American citizens, because what the government itself does, and by the government I am referring directly to politicians and even foreign actors, such as in the case of Israel, are attempting to bring every American citizen to heel about us even being able to have a voice to speak up about something. You know, it took me a while to grow into a man, you know, to not be afraid of standing up for something. You know, when I was younger, I didn't always stand up for something, but that's not the case anymore. You know, I learned along the way that you need to just do what you're going to do. Not everyone's going to like you. You know, I like how Sean Ryan was talking about being in Colombia, dealing with cocaine and all this other stuff. You know, when I was young, I didn't always like myself a lot, you know. 5 different parents had given me up before I was even 2 years old, you know. My biological dad, my mom. You know, I didn't even go home the day I was born from the hospital with my mother. And so my whole life, you know, I didn't know if I would like myself or not. You know, a lot of self-destructive behavior became behind that. But sooner or later, I figured out that I'm just the guy that my Creator made me to be. and that who I am is okay. My beliefs are not out of line with like treating people fairly. So I don't have anything to really hide or be ashamed of as far as who I am these days, because I'm a pretty good guy. I'm not a great guy. You know, I'm not Mother Teresa in a male body. But I'm also not a bad guy. I'm a pretty decent guy. And I don't need to be afraid to put my face out there. And as such, I don't need to be afraid of the opinion or the political opinions that I have, because I'm entitled to them by my creator, not by the United States government. And when Pam Bondi is going out there talking about all of the different aspects of putting people on a domestic terrorist watch list or whatever, and having the FBI try to open up criminal cases against people that just have a political opinion. And to be clear, you know, I'm not really a fan of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I think she's kind of cute. You know, that's really my only opinion on her. She's a bartender. Do I think that she ought to be a politician? Probably not. You know, liberals and pink hair and blue hair, do I agree with them? Generally not. Do I agree with Ted Cruz in some things, but definitely not in other things? You know, I am not some type of lapdog for Israel or something like that. Definitely not. Why would I be? I was born in Southern California in LA. I've got nothing to do with Israel. I'm not Jewish, whatever. None of that. So when you're talking about having a group of people in Washington, whoever they are, or in other countries, whoever they are, because a lot of our politicians have been bought and paid for. Oh, you know what? Let me just throw one more little thing in there. Do I think that America ought to be overrun with Somalians and Ilhan Omar? Definitely not. You know, definitely not. But when you have a group of people in Washington, no matter what they think, no matter who they are and what they do, and they're telling you what you can or can't think, what you can or can't say, in a country where the Constitution guarantees you the right to have a government that represents you. And then even they tried to change that. It's no longer a representational government. They changed that. Sorry, that's my cop. When you have them telling you that you're potentially going to be looked at as a domestic terrorist, maybe term limits and getting foreign money out of our politics is something, as a discussion that we should be having. I don't think that the entire country should be overrun with ICE agents who were too cowardly to deploy to a battlefield where the enemy might actually have the ability to end them, and they want to go out and try to become alpha males in an environment where they're relatively safe because their immediate danger is trying to pick up Jose on the side of the freeway selling oranges for $60 a day. You know, I think that's cowardly. At the same time, I don't want the country overrun with Somalians that don't share the American culture of freedom more than anything. Freedom. Freedom for everyone. Freedom to be Muslim if that's the case. But also that we don't ever, ever, ever let Sharia law come into being. Right now, the government's continually growing itself, enlarging its numbers. And when all the illegal immigrants have been deported, then what are they going to do with those people? They're not going to give up their federal pensions. We're going to continue paying for those guys to do what exactly? In turn, be levied against you or myself or someone else? You know, I don't agree with growing the government ad infinitum, ad nauseum. Not at all. And I'm a pretty conservative chap. And I do believe in Jesus, and I do go to church, and I do work a lot. I'm not on welfare at all. Have never voted for a Democratic candidate in my life, with the exception of when I was in Louisiana. I had to vote for judges because every single candidate was Democratic in New Orleans. So with that exception, that's the only time I've ever voted Democratically in my life for the Democratic Party. I've never, outside of that, voted for a Democrat even once. But this whole MAGA, the Make America Great thing again, being just in support of Trump, and if you don't support Trump, you're somehow an enemy of the people or the country. I think that that's something that ought to give a lot of people pause. What if one day, the Pam Bondi thing? This is something else I don't know if a lot of people know. Pam Bondi, up until a certain point, was Democratic herself, up until something like 2005, 2001, something like that. She was a Democrat herself, just like Trump. So this whole party ideology thing, man, we got to get rid of it, dude. A lot of people don't know this about me, but I go to black people church all the time. My wife hates it when I do it. And I go there because I play organ. I play keyboard myself. And I go to black people church because I love black people church music, man. Nothing wrong, nothing racist with saying it. They got great music, dude. I go there all the time. Except my wife tells me to leave them alone because I might be viewed with suspicion as why I'm in their church. And my wife wants me to let them go worship in peace. So she tells me not to go. My wife's Latina, so she's not saying it from some type of racist place or whatever. She just thinks that I should leave them be. But even when I go to black people church, you know what I see? I don't see black people. I see a bunch of Christians and they're doing their thing, man. And they ought to be free to do whatever they're doing. There's a lot of people in this country that try to cause a lot of divide and gain a lot of traction, a lot of ground by keeping us divided. Two wings, one bird. The Republican and the Democrat Party sit there and rule over all of us. We're supposed to be ruling them. The government's supposed to yield to what we want, not the other way around. And so when you have people, the Department of Justice, issuing to every federal law enforcement agency, state agency, and all the different law enforcement agencies, stating that if you are an American that has an American opinion on American politics, and it doesn't coincide with what Pam Bondi wants, even though she herself has switched allegiances. You can go look it up. Don't take my word for it. And even though Donald Trump himself has switched allegiances, that you are potentially a domestic terrorist. That's something that I would have a long, hard look at, and that maybe these people shouldn't be in office telling us that we don't have a right to govern our country as we feel like, as we see fit. That's all I got for today, man. You know what? I'm not even going to edit this. I'm just going to upload it. I've got 2 Christian interviews coming up in January, man. And I'm going to do them. But at the same time, I'm a flawed, imperfect being because I like music that isn't anything that you would ever hear at a church, man. I'm a mix of trying to be repentant and also at the same time I like certain worldly things like music, so whatever. Enough out of me. I'm going to shut up. Hope you guys are having a great day. Thank you for being here. If you want, like and subscribe. If not, that's okay too. Hope you guys are having a great day. And as always, more than anything, I'm not trying to tell anybody what to think, but I do want you to think about these topics for yourself because these are things that we should be considering, man. You have somebody that you don't know that you'll never meet telling you what you can or can't think about how your life is or is not going to be lived on the land that you were born on. That's kind of a big deal, man. Enough out of me. Have a great day.